Pushing Back the Shadows, support and awareness for mental health. Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Pushing Back the Shadows podcast. My name is Alex Davis, I'm the founder of Pushing Back the Shadows, and I'm also the main author behind the blog. So today, I want to kind of open with a little bit of a controversial statement. It's not about the solution. Okay, the solution is not important. Now I can almost hear people saying, what on earth are you on about? What solution? Why isn't it important? What on earth is going on here? Or as my 3-year-old started saying, Alexander Davis, I have absolutely no idea what you're waffling on about. So, let me explain. In today's society, there is a big focus put on solutions. We look at, we hear all about, solutions to world poverty, global hunger, those sorts of things. But we also have a lot of emphasis placed on solutions, problem solving, and other things like that. So if you're in the work environment, you get the question of how can I make this better? Or what can I do to resolve this issue? And the emphasis is placed on that solution, on what you can do to resolve the complaint, to improve the service, whatever it might be. Putting that on a slightly different spin, when we're ill, be it with a mental illness, with a physical illness, the emphasis is placed on the goal or the solution, the cure, if you will. If it's rehabilitation therapy, it's on being able to use whatever limb it is requiring rehab, or whether it's different kinds of rehab, being able to be sober, or whatever it might be. And a lot of emphasis is placed on that solution. But it's not all about the solution, is it? It's not all about that end result. We are taught a lot like that, aren't we? I mean, I'm thinking because my partner's teenager, he's doing his exams at the moment, his GCSEs, and there's a lot of work goes into that, and it all builds up to the actual exams themselves, and then suddenly there's nothing except the waiting game for the grades. But then you get to the grades, and that's what is kind of sold as being the most important part: the results, the goal, the end, the solution. But really, that's not the most important thing. And it really isn't. Despite the emphasis that society places on it, whatever situation we're in, the solution or the goal, the end result, is not the most important thing. So what is? Well, in today's episode, I'm going to unpack that a bit more for you and tell you a little bit about kind of what I believe is more important than the solution itself. Now, this stems from a quote that I came across while I was on Twitter the other day, and it was something that I found actually really kind of spoke to me. I was really intrigued by the idea that it presented, and I did want to tap into that more, and I wanted to find out more about it. So let's have a look. If the solution, the end result, is not more important, then what is? What is more important than the solution? The answer's coming right up in just a minute. You're listening to Pushing Back the Shadows. What could be more important than the solution? Your end result, the thing that you've achieved, the thing that you've been aiming for, what could possibly be more important than that? The answer? The journey. And that was the full quote itself. It said it's not about the solution, it's about the journey. You see, when we are aiming for our solution, we tend to become a little bit blinkered, don't we? A bit like a pilot getting that target vision, where they almost get so fixated on that target that they just kind of fly straight into it. A bit like that. That seems to be the way it works. We get so focused on the solution that we forget about the journey, and in some ways, the journey is much more important. I'll give you an example. For a long time, you'd think about starting a website, starting a blog and a podcast as you want to get to a point where you are reaching loads of people. If you're in it to make money, then you'd want to be making enough that you can become a full-time blogger. If you're in it just to help people, inform people, you want to reach as many people as you can. That's your goal. But how do you get there? You start by making mistakes. You start by learning things. And yeah, it's great when you get to that point where you are, be it reaching however many people you want to be reaching, or whether you're earning as much as you want to be earning, whatever that goal is, you get to that point and it's great. You know, you keep doing what you're doing, it's working, it's brilliant. But how did you get there? Since I started pushing back the shadows, I've learned so many things. Things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do, and that in itself can be far more valuable than actually reaching my goal. It's not to say I don't want to reach my goal, because who wouldn't want to reach their goal? But the journey itself is the thing that teaches you. To give you another example, the teenager with his exams, he does lots of work, lots of revision, attends lots of kind of out-of-hours classes, that sort of thing, and it's very easy to look at the exam results and he can sit there and say, yeah, I've done it, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve, or oh, I haven't quite achieved what I wanted to achieve, whichever way it spins. But realistically, the journey is what teaches him. He does the revision, does the homework, puts the work in, and that is where the journey becomes more important. The journey is what teaches us. I want you to sit back for a second and use your imagination. Imagine that you're climbing a mountain and your goal is to get to the top, the tippity top of this mountain, so that you can enjoy the beautiful panoramic view that surrounds you. You might be going with some friends, you might be going with like a hiking group or a walking club that you go to, but you're climbing the mountain. Now, some of these mountains, it might take a day to kind of get up and down the mountain. It might be kind of you start at some stupid o'clock in the morning and you have lunch at the summit and then you come back down. But you only spend about an hour at the top. What about the other 8, 10, 12, however many hours it takes? What about those hours? Are you walking with your friends? You're chatting, you're spending time with one another. You get to see perhaps some of the wildlife, that's out around on this mountain. You might even get some really good views as you're going up the mountain. It may be that you see the sunset or the sunrise as you're climbing. So compare the two for a minute. All that time talking with your friends, getting the sunset or the sunrise, seeing the wildlife, spending time outdoors, compared with an hour at the top. For some of you, they might be equally important as each other. It could be that you would weigh them up and say, well, yeah, actually, no, the hour at the top is just as good as the journey. But even then, if that's what you're saying, that's where my point is. That hour at the top is not the be-all and end-all, because you might be having conversations with your friends that really mean something. You might not get to spend time with these people very often. It might be that one of them decides to talk about a problem that they've been having, and you are able to help them with that problem. Whatever happens, the journey can be just as important. So how do we apply that to our daily lives? Our struggles with depression, with anxiety, bipolar, and other mental health issues, how do we apply that to our lives? Let's take a look. You're listening to Pushing Back the Shadows. So you're like me, struggling with depression, struggling with anxiety, or perhaps you're struggling with bipolar or some other mental health issue. How do you apply this concept to your daily life? If you think about it this way, any walk with mental health is like a journey. You start when you kind of have your first crisis, and then you go through and you're looking for that day or, that time when you get through the other side. And we all do it, don't we? We look for the time when we can get out of this crisis. And there are two parts to this application for our lives. Now, the first part is similar to my story about the mountain. How many times when we're going through our struggle do we actually learn different ways to cope with it? Different things that actually could be applied to other areas in our lives, not just to our mental health. When you go through therapy, you learn coping techniques, and you learn more about the struggles themselves. And that in itself can be a brilliant thing to learn, because you can then empathize with other people having gone through the same thing. But then those coping techniques, you can share them with other people, you can apply them to different areas in your life. And that in itself makes the journey just as valuable, just as important, if not sometimes more so, because you're learning new things. But what if that solution, that cure that you're looking for, what if it doesn't exist? What if it doesn't exist? It's not really a prospect that we would really like to entertain much, is it? We like to think that one day we will get better, that one day we will find the answer to our problems. But in reality, some people live with it. I know a few people who have never come off the medication, have never really got through the other end. They do have good days. They also have bad days. But they've never really found that freedom from depression. And it's times like that when the journey itself is an ongoing process. The solution isn't necessarily there. And it is more about the journey. What do we take away from this? I've given a few suggestions as to how we can apply it to our everyday lives, and I've given a few suggestions to how the journey itself can be more valuable. But you might be sat there and you might be thinking, well, yeah, it's all very well, but what do I do with it? Where do I go from here? Think about where you are at the moment. Think about your life. And think for a second about what you could be doing at the moment. Because I guarantee it, there's something that you do at the moment that will make it all worth it. So maybe take a moment and stop. Look around. Enjoy where you are. If you can't enjoy it, because I do appreciate that with depression and that, it can be difficult to enjoy stuff. If you can't, then perhaps just take that step back. Look at where you are, and perhaps look at where you've been. Is it better? Is it worse? What have you learned? What have you overcome? But really, it's not about the solution. It's about the journey. And it's about making the most of that journey so that we don't miss out on days, months, weeks, even years of our lives. Focus on the journey, because the journey is your greatest teacher. That's all from me for this week. I hope you guys, as always, have a great weekend, and I shall catch you next week on the Pushing Back the Shadows podcast. Take care, guys. You've been listening to Pushing Back the Shadows. To find out more, head over to pushingbacktheshadows.com and hit subscribe to get all of our latest updates straight to your inbox. Alternatively, connect with us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/AlexDavisPBTS, or you can visit us on Twitter at AlexDavisPBTS. Enable Pushing Back the Shadows to continue supporting people in the mental health community, their friends and their family. By pledging just $1 a month, you could help us to continue supporting people with depression, with anxiety, with bipolar and other mental illnesses. You can also unlock exclusive rewards, behind the scenes, sneak previews of upcoming posts and much, much more. So head over to www.patreon.com/AlexDavisPBTS to find out more.